Let's talk equipment. What's in my bag? I always take a key set of lenses, lighting, and logic with me into the field, no matter where I go or what I'm shooting. When it comes to your kit, you can pack everything and it's still not going to get you the best shots if you don't have the right mindset. And the fact is, even if you have the right mindset, having too much gear can actually get in the way. You may think the ultimate budget also equals the ultimate outcome, but having every piece of equipment will often cause analysis paralysis. And I've dealt with this for years. They even have a name for it: gear acquisition syndrome. People call it gas. And I have terrible gas. I've bought so many pieces of equipment over the years that I get so lost in the weeds and not the wonder. So I would encourage you at all costs to dial back that kit to your bare minimum. Ask what brings you joy and lean into that category of shooting. If you're someone just going out on the town for the weekend with your family and you don't want to carry a bunch of kit, I'd recommend a nice wide-angle zoom like a 24-105. You may not be able to punch in really close for architecture or things like wildlife, but the 24-105 will give you a nice range to work with in most situations. If you're someone like me who's more wildlife-centric, or you want to take a more photojournalistic approach, maybe take a 70-300mm telephoto lens. It's an EF lens, which I use an adapter for, and it gets me really close to where I want to go, whether it's birds, mammals, or photojournalism situations. Just keep in mind the aperture will be dialed down more, so it won't be quite as wide for shooting in low light environments. If you're using your phone for most of your standard shots, then take something like a fisheye or a telephoto that's even longer. Like a 1-400mm would be great for getting extremely close. Ask yourself what that core need is and what brings you joy in the first place. For me, it's getting in close to the details with that macro photography lens, and then it's using things like a telephoto to punch really far in the distance. So I would encourage you to use those essential pieces of kit to work backwards in how you approach your process, because your mindset will ultimately drive the outcome. For my primary macro shooting, I use the Canon RF 100mm f2.8L IS USM macro lens. This is the latest macro lens for Canon and is top of the line when it comes to getting tack-sharp shots with my Canon R5. Right now, attached to my R5, I've got the Canon MPE 65mm. Now this is a heck of a lens. It's practically a microscope on the end of my camera. Coming from the biology field, I was so excited. This lens takes us from 1x all the way down to 5x, a 5-to-1 ratio for life size, magnifying the world around us like never before. On the back of this lens, you'll notice the body is the R5, my standard right now for full frame shooting on a mirrorless setup, and I use the Canon EOS R for other situations like a backup and my Zoom meetings. Let's talk lighting. When it comes to lighting, there's two main schools of thought. There's the flash, which everybody knows traditionally as being a way to add extra light into the frame. And if you're doing a lot of work for a long period of time and need consistent power output, there are things like this studio strobe. And it's a can-shaped light that has a much larger battery and bulb. It also has things like a modeling lamp, like how I'm being lit right now. The studio strobe has features that the flash doesn't, but the trade-offs are going to be the weight and form factor involved comparatively. So the nice part about the flash is it's small enough that you can literally pack it in a pack and take it anywhere. When it comes to studio strobes, this is about 6 to 10 pounds, depending on what you've got on it. Right now it's around 6 pounds, and after about 4 hours of shooting, my shoulders are not very happy. What that can do over time is cause problems not only physically, but mentally as well. It actually takes away your desire to shoot when you're carrying so much stuff that you have to worry about the weight. This is the radio trigger that I attach to the hot shoe on the top of my Canon R5, and I've got some tape just to hold it all together these days. So let's talk about the kit that fits. When it comes to thinking about your kit, think of it like a tailored suit or garment. You're not going to go and expect it to just be right straight out of the gate. You want to get it dialed in specific to your needs. If you don't need that telephoto lens in your kit, why would you be carrying that around with you everywhere? It's going to just create more weight and worry in the process. So why not take the tools that are needed to make the shots that get you really excited? My goal is to help you figure out what you actually want to take. If you're shooting a lot of landscapes and you love flowers, pack that telephoto. If you're mostly a macro person like me, you're probably not gonna need it. So when I go out on my standard hike, I typically only take my macro lens and my flash. That's it. Not my big macro, not my telephoto, not my wide angle, not my specialty lenses. It's always really tempting because I think I'm gonna see this really cool flower and I'm gonna wanna photograph it in a completely new way, and I won't have the lens I need. But I think that part of creativity is this give and take. So when we're talking about the kit that fits, we wanna take things that aren't going to weigh us down with worry and will let us actually move on our feet and mentally through the process too. If you're enjoying being present and in the moment and you have your settings dialed in, then you don't have to worry about things like what lens to choose and what settings to get in the first place. If we look at the kit from a 10,000 foot view, it's got a few main parts. We have the lenses, the lighting, the camera body, light modifiers, and any accessories that you might need to help with the process. When you're building your studio, it doesn't have to be a complicated process. In fact, the word studio should mean something that can fit in a backpack. I would imagine the ideal studio as being one that you could take with you anywhere and set up in any location. And that may sound really intimidating, but if we're working through this mindset of the kit that fits, then we can ask ourselves, what do we need in the studio and how can we optimize it with what we already have? For example, when I was first starting off with field studio type materials, I headed to my local craft store and I found one of these velvet jewelry stands. Now the best part is I can set it up like that and then it can just float behind the flower or whatever it is I'm working with. And I can also stick it in places behind branches and other spots that are hard to reach. If it breaks, it's only a few bucks and it's not the end of the world. I can bend it exactly where I need it to go and I don't have to overthink the process. Overthinking can really get in the way of the outcome. Ask yourself what your creative goals are and what brings you joy in the process. I love photography because it gives me this opportunity to tinker and to think and be pensive and to slow down a little bit. The fact is, we never take enough time to actually appreciate the details that make up a single flower. I think it's important to slow down when we're thinking about the process of building the kit that fits and the perfect studio. Because if we don't know our goals and what brings us joy, then the kit and the studio will never align in the end. Let's talk about minimum viable studio. What you'll need is a background, a light, and some light modifiers. I just showed you an example of a portable background, that jewelry display stand. But you can also head to your local fabric store, buy a swatch of velvet, or anything that's not quite as reflective. Suede is also great as well. Ask yourself where your budget sits and what your goals could be with where you'd like to go. If you don't have a dedicated macro lens and you don't have the budget to, there are a few other approaches like using extension rings and close-up filters. Another top tip is to use a lens reversal ring, and then you can use something like a nifty 50, a basic budget lens, and flip it over to the other side with that ring. Then it's near microscopic, but it is incredibly challenging to keep things in focus. The fact is, that'll affect your overall quality of image. Either way, it'll give you the opportunity to get your feet wet and start filling the frame more instead of cropping in post. Remember that filling the frame is going to give us more to work with creatively over time. If you can manage to, get a dedicated macro lens. So why would you want a telephoto? I love to shoot waterfalls and mammals, birds. For all those things, you would need a telephoto anyway. And the best part is you can use that to zoom in closely like you couldn't otherwise. Why would you want a wide angle lens? Wide angle is great because it helps tell the bigger picture. It'll help you show the whole ecosystem if you're out in the wild. And I personally always reach for the macro lens, but sometimes I pack that wide angle because it really helps widen the scope of what we're thinking about. And observation is the ultimate tool when it comes to photography. That's where the beauty of this craft shines. If we simply go out and shoot and fail to share, then we never have the opportunity to bring the conversations to the table that bring us out there in the first place. Okay, cool. My brain's just like blah, blah, blah. I don't know how big my canvas is. I'm so used to the Zoom thing, like for a meeting, you know.